This is the Twilight Whispers Club. The sky dims, the wind stills, and somewhere between day and night, a story leans in to speak. These whispers aren't loud, but they stay with you. You've been invited. Lean in close and listen. The metallic tang, thick as rust and slaughter, assaulted my senses before the door even yielded. In that instant, the mundane label of welfare check dissolved. This was an invitation into nightmare, though the full scope of the abomination awaiting within that solitary farmhouse remained mercifully veiled. My name is Ilara. For more than a decade, I've navigated the labyrinthine corridors of social work, witnessing the grim spectrum of human suffering, the bruises of abuse, the hollow eyes of neglect, the pervasive chill of poverty. Yet, the tableau I stumbled upon that day unmoored something fundamental within me. It began mundanely enough. A tremor of concern voiced over the phone by a neighbor, noting the prolonged absence of the Thorne family. A reserved unit, the Thornes, mother, father, 2 young children. Their small holding lay an hour's drive from the city's sprawl, a pocket of self-imposed isolation. Rural folk often kept to themselves, vanishing into their routines for days, but a discordant note hummed beneath this particular report. Down the attenuated, dust-choked lane leading to the farm, a subtle tremor of dread began its insidious work in my gut. The landscape, usually a canvas of pastoral charm, seemed charged with a baleful energy. Shadows clung possessively to the contours of the land under the late afternoon sun. I chided myself for succumbing to gothic fancy, attributing the unease to an overtaxed imagination. Gravel spat beneath my tires as I halted before the house. It radiated wrongness. Curtains were drawn with hermetic finality, silencing the windows. The usual signs of agrarian life were absent. The battered pickup, a permanent fixture by the gate, had vanished. Drawing a steadying breath, I exited the car into an atmosphere thick and unnervingly still. Not a whisper of wind stirred the overgrown grasses. Approaching the porch, my gaze snagged on the front door. It bore deep, frantic gouges, as if claws, human or otherwise, had scrabbled with desperate intent to breach it from one side or the other. My knock reverberated, a stark punctuation in the silence. "Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne? Ilara from Social Services, just checking in." Emptiness answered. I rapped again, harder. Still, only the oppressive quiet. Protocol urged retreat. A note left, a return later. But an insistent pressure, call it instinct or sheer folly, anchored me there. The certainty of profound wrongness was absolute. I reached for the handle. It turned, unnervingly compliant. As the door swung inward, the coppery miasma engulfed me, raw and visceral. A hand flew to my mouth, stifling a gag. "Hello?" My voice emerged thin, frayed. "Is anyone home?" The silence deepened, amplifying the groan of floorboards beneath my weight as I crossed the threshold. Darkness reigned within, the drawn curtains plunging the interior into premature twilight. As my vision adapted, wreckage materialized. A lamp lay in shards, a chair capsized in violent protest, and then the blood. It was an omnipresent horror, sprayed across the walls in arterial hieroglyphs, congealing in dark pools on the hardwood. My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Every nerve shrieked for flight, yet I remained rooted. If life, however faint, persisted within these walls, I had to find it. Deeper I ventured, the soles of my shoes adhering slightly to the tacky floor. The living room was a maelstrom of overturned furniture and shattered picture frames. Whatever tempest had raged here, it had been brutally physical. Nearing the kitchen archway, a sound pierced the stillness, freezing the marrow in my bones. A whimper, fragile and low. It emanated from the upper floor. Hello? I projected my voice upwards, louder this time. Is someone there? I'm here to help. Another whimper, a fraction stronger, unmistakably human. I found the staircase, my hand trembling as it sought the banister's support. Each riser creaked its protest, the sound deafening in the tomb-like silence. At the landing, I paused. The sanguine trail continued, a gruesome path leading down the hallway towards a closed door at its terminus. The whimpering was clearer now, punctuated by soft, heartbroken sobs. Slowly, heart thudding against my throat, I approached the door. I'm coming in, I announced, the words barely a whisper. Turning the handle, I eased the door open. The room swam in shadows, but I discerned a small shape huddled in the far corner. As my eyes adjusted, the form resolved into a child, a girl, no older than 6 or 7. Hey there, I murmured, forcing calm into my voice despite the terror clawing within me. My name's Ilara. I'm here to help you. Are you hurt? The girl looked up, her eyes vast pools of fear. She was smeared with crimson, her fair hair darkly matted with it. Yet, closer inspection brought a wave of relief. The blood wasn't hers. She appeared physically unscathed. I took a cautious step forward. She flinched violently. It's okay, I soothed. I won't hurt you. Can you tell me your name? Clara, she stammered. My name is Clara. Hi, Clara, I said, sinking to her level. Can you tell me what happened? Where are your parents? At the mention of her parents, Clara's face dissolved into unrestrained weeping, her small frame racked with tremors. I edged closer, battling the primal urge to snatch her up and flee. It's okay, sweetie. You're safe now. Can you tell me where your parents are? A trembling finger pointed towards the closet. My gaze followed. Only then did I notice the closet door, slightly ajar. A dark viscous fluid seeped from beneath it, staining the carpet. My stomach churned. I knew, with dreadful certainty, what lay beyond, but confirmation was necessary. Clara, I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. I need you to close your eyes for me, okay? Keep them shut tight until I say you can open them. Can you do that? She nodded, squeezing her eyes shut with fierce obedience. On unsteady legs, I rose and crossed to the closet. The stench here was overpowering. Reaching for the handle, I inhaled deeply and pulled. The sight that met my eyes will be forever seared into my memory. Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, or what remained of them. Their bodies were savaged, rendered almost unrecognizable, and nestled between them, a small boy, Clara's brother. His eyes were open, fixed in a vacant stare. He had been dead for days. I stumbled back, bile scorching my throat, managing to shut the door before vomiting onto the bedroom floor. Wiping my mouth, My mind raced, grappling with the impossible. What monstrous force could inflict such carnage? It resembled an animal attack, yet no known beast wrought devastation on this scale. And Clara? How had she survived this crucible? I turned back to the little girl, still huddled, eyes clamped shut. Evacuation was paramount. Now. Clara, my voice rasped. You can open your eyes. We're leaving now, okay? I'm taking you somewhere safe. She nodded, eyes fluttering open. I extended my hand. After a heartbeat's hesitation, her small fingers closed around mine. Descending the stairs, I fumbled for my phone. No signal. Of course. Outside, the clean air felt like a physical balm after the charnel house within. I guided Clara to my car, settling her into the back seat. As I shut her door, a sound ripped through the twilight stillness, arresting my heart. A low, guttural growl. Slowly, deliberately I turned, scanning the overgrown field bordering the house. There, at the fringe of the tall grass, movement flickered. Something immense, low to the ground. In the fading light, I glimpsed matted fur, wickedly long claws, and twin points of light. Eyes, incandescent with predatory focus, locked onto me. Thought ceased. Instinct took command. I wrenched open the driver's door, flung myself inside, twisted the key. The engine roared defiantly as the creature erupted from the grass, a blur of malevolent speed charging directly at us. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, tires churning frantically on the loose gravel. The rearview mirror framed a pursuing nightmare, impossibly fast, jaws agape, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. We hit the lane. I shifted to drive, accelerator pinned to the floor. It was upon us, claws screeching against the trunk metal. "Hold on, Clara," I yelled, wrenching the wheel, trying to shake it. For miles it pursued, an embodiment of relentless hunger. Each time hope flickered that we'd outpaced it, a glance in the mirror revealed its tireless form, closing the distance. Only when we reached the main highway, the comforting presence of other headlights blooming around us, did it finally relinquish the chase, melting back into the darkness from which it sprang. As we hurtled towards the city, its distant lights offering scant solace, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Clara huddled silently in the back. I glanced at her reflection, this small vessel of survival adrift in an ocean of horror. "It's okay," I murmured, the words aimed as much at myself as at her. "We're safe now." But driving through the deepening night, hands trembling on the wheel, I knew safety was a fragile illusion, shattered irrevocably back at the farmhouse. We had escaped the immediate teeth and claws, yes, but the entity, whatever it was, remained out there. As adrenaline ebbed, replaced by the chilling weight of witnessed atrocity, the stark realization dawned. My life, and Clara's, were fractured beyond repair. The quiet countryside, traversed mere hours ago, now pulsed with unseen menace. Every shadow a potential hiding place. Every silence pregnant with the echo of that bone-chilling growl. Entering the city, the familiar skyline a strangely ineffective shield, I forged a silent promise. I would shield Clara. I would unravel the monstrous truth behind her family's fate. Somehow, someday, I would impose meaning onto the nightmare. Yet, a deeper, colder certainty whispered that some horrors defy explanation. Some terrors refuse to dissipate with the dawn, and sometimes The monsters lurking in the periphery of our world are terrifyingly, undeniably real. A profound stillness draped the woods, broken only by the crisp percussion of my boots on fallen leaves. I halted, my exhalations misting the sharp autumn air, ghosts dissolving moments after birth. Something felt dissonant. The forest held its breath, an unnerving suspension before an unseen climax. Then, a flicker, movement darting between the skeletal trunks. I was not the sole occupant of this wilderness, and the quiet pilgrimage I'd sought was fracturing, threatening to become a desperate scramble for survival. My name is Elias. The wild places have always been my solace. Raised near the craggy spine of ancient mountains, my youth was a tapestry, woven with explorations of deep woods and soaring peaks. Now, at 28, the city's clamor still drives me back here whenever possible, seeking the restorative silence of nature. Just myself, my pack, and the sprawling, untamed land. This weekend promised just that, a solitary immersion. Hours melted away under a canopy ablaze with fall's final glory. Solitude was a balm, the vibrant hues of feast for eyes starved by urban gray. Yet, as the sun arced lower, painting longer shadows, the peace frayed at the edges, replaced by a creeping disquiet. It began subtly, a twig snapping too sharply, leaves rustling with an unnatural cadence. Sounds ordinarily benign now prickled my senses. I dismissed it as nerves, woodland creatures going about their business, but a deeper instinct hummed a warning. Rounding a curve in the path, the sight that greeted me turned my blood to ice water. A crude encampment sprawled within a small clearing. This was no hiker's haven. Tarpaulins, stained and weathered, stretched between trees in a haphazard defensive maze. Refuse, empty tins, discarded bottles, lay scattered like metallic fungi, and carved crudely, violently, into the thick bark of a sentinel oak. Keep out. My heart hammered against my ribs. Retreat fast was the only imperative. I pivoted, but before my feet could obey, coarse male voices sliced through the quiet, drawing rapidly nearer. Cold electric panic seized me. I plunged behind a hulking granite boulder, scrunching low, willing myself invisible. Through a narrow fissure, I watched 3 figures emerge into the clearing. They were rough-hewn men, bearded and clad in ragged attire, each bearing a rifle nonchalantly slung across his back. "Told you I heard something," one rasped, his gaze sweeping the perimeter like a predator's. "Likely some city hiker. Think they own the damn woods." "Well," another added with a low, chilling chuckle, "if you did hear 'em, they picked a poor day for sightseeing." I stifled my breath, each inhale a potential betrayal. They prowled the clearing, their search pattern tightening, closing the distance to my refuge with agonizing slowness. Staying hidden was a temporary reprieve. Discovery felt inevitable. In a surge of adrenaline-fueled clarity, I waited for their backs to momentarily align, then burst from cover. I sprinted, heedless of the branches that whipped my face, tearing through the dense undergrowth like a startled deer. Behind me, startled shouts, then the terrifyingly distinct click-clack of rifles being readied. "There, get him!" Fear lent impossible speed to my limbs. I vaulted over decaying logs, Ducked beneath low-slung boughs, the forest floor a blur beneath my pounding feet. The woods, moments ago a sanctuary, transformed into a treacherous labyrinth. A gunshot cracked the air, the bullet whining past to splinter bark from a tree, mere inches from my head. Wood fragments stung my cheek. I didn't falter, didn't dare look back, only ran. Their pursuit was audible, a crashing, clumsy thunder through the trees. They knew this terrain intimately. My lead felt fragile, ephemeral. I needed an edge, a sanctuary. Ahead, the ground dropped away into a narrow ravine. Without a second thought, I launched myself down the steep incline, loose scree and soil cascading with me. At the bottom, a shallow overhang formed a rudimentary cave. It wasn't much, but it was everything. I wedged myself into the cramped darkness, pressing back until stone met spine. Seconds later, their heavy breathing sounded from the ravine's lip. "Where'd he vanish?" one snarled. "Down here someplace. Couldn't have gotten far," another voice insisted. I held my breath as they scrambled down the slope, the sound terrifyingly close. Dirt and pebbles rained down, some skittering into my hiding place. "Don't look closely. Please, don't look closely." For an eternity compressed into minutes, they combed the ravine floor. I heard them mere feet away, kicking at brush, peering into shadows. My muscles coiled, primed for a final desperate confrontation. Then, deliverance in a gruff command. "Nah, he ain't here. Must have pushed downstream. Come on." Their receding footsteps were the sweetest music. Still, I remained entombed in the cold earth until my limbs screamed and the forest light outside began to soften towards dusk. Only then did I dare to emerge, legs trembling beneath me. Climbing out, every snap of a twig sent jolts of fear through me, convinced of their return. But the woods offered only the familiar chorus of evening birdsong and burgeoning insect life. Returning to the trail in darkness was unthinkable. Those men were out there, perhaps watching. My sole recourse was to press onward through the night, putting as much distance as possible between myself and that violated clearing. As true darkness fell, the forest morphed into an alien landscape. Shadows writhed, transforming stumps and boulders into monstrous shapes. An owl's sudden hoot nearly stopped my heart. Yet, driven by primal instinct, I moved on. I navigated by starlight, a silent phantom drifting through the trees. When the first tentative fingers of dawn touched the eastern sky, I was utterly spent, famished, and hopelessly lost, but breathing, alive. As the sun climbed, painting the leaves in gentle hues once more, I finally allowed myself to collapse against the trunk of an ancient maple. My water was nearly gone, provisions non-existent, my location a mystery. But distance lay between me and the hunters, and that was paramount. Just as despair began to settle, a sound reached me, distant, mechanical, yet beautiful, the rhythmic whump-whump of helicopter blades. Rescue. Someone must have raised the alarm when I failed to return. Stumbling into the nearest sunlit patch, I waved my arms with the last dregs of my strength as the aircraft materialized overhead. Recognition, then descent. Relief washed over me, so potent it buckled my knees. The debriefing with rangers and local officers felt surreal. I recounted the makeshift camp, the armed men, the desperate flight through the woods. Their faces were grim. They spoke of tracking transient squatters who'd been menacing visitors for months. "You got lucky," a seasoned ranger observed, his eyes holding the weight of other, darker outcomes. "Not everyone they cross paths with walks away." Driving away from the trailhead later, the familiar steering wheel alien beneath my trembling hands, I replayed the preceding 24 hours. A tranquil escape twisted violently into a primal struggle. Danger confronted, somehow survived. The forest, my lifelong refuge, now held a new, unsettling resonance, a place not just of beauty, but of potential menace, raw and unpredictable. Yet, paradoxically, my reverence for it hadn't dimmed. It had deepened, tempered by an understanding of its untamed heart. Pulling onto the highway towards home, I knew I would return. Perhaps not to that specific haunted trail, but certainly to the woods. The terror had been profound, yet it had also stripped away artifice, revealing a core of resilience, resourcefulness, and courage I hadn't known I possessed. The next time I laced my boots, awareness would be sharper, caution heightened. But so too would be my sense of being alive, acutely attuned to the wild pulse of the world. Sometimes, illumination is found only in the deepest shadows. As for the men, the authorities promised investigation, but I suspected the forest kept its secrets well, some buried too deep for any light to reach. My gratitude for escape was profound, the lessons learned etched into my very being, companions for all adventures yet to come. Silas felt the cabin coalesce more than appear, a dark shape swimming into view through the viscous fog as his car climbed the final rise. Dampness, heavy as a shroud, instantly permeated his clothes the moment he stepped out, the air thick with the scent of sodden earth and decaying leaves. Silence pressed in, broken only by the memory of the long, fog-bound ascent, his knuckles still aching from their frozen grip on the wheel. He pushed open the complaining timber of the door, plunging into a gloom that swallowed him whole before his fingers found the switch, summoning a weak bloom from the solitary overhead bulb. One vast room unfolded, merging living space and rudimentary kitchen, bisected by a steep, narrow stairwell, clawing towards a loft. Skeletal shapes of old furniture hugged the walls, draped in shadow. Beneath Silas's boots, the floorboards uttered soft groans of protest. Neglect was palpable, yet it lacked the sharp edges of vandalism. It felt more like a slow surrender. His duffel bag landed with a soft thud. He tested the chairs. One responded with a precarious wobble. Dust lay thick as velvet on every surface, coating the walls, clinging near the windows, where a faint, musty breath hinted at mildew. Dragging a hand across the tabletop left a ghostly gray smear on his skin. In the kitchen alcove, the faucet coughed and sputtered before yielding a reluctant trickle of water. The stove, an archaic beast, sat cold. The cupboards gaped, mostly vacant save for a few chipped plates and mugs, surprisingly clean. Silas traversed the main room, his gaze drawn to the staircase. Each riser seemed to whine under imagined weight. Ascending, he found the loft a cramped, low-ceilinged affair, harboring only a naked bed frame. Near it, another door stood sentinel, presumably guarding an attic or storage space. He tried the knob. It held fast, unyielding. No desire to pry lingered in him. Solitude, not secrets, was his aim. Descending, he unfurled his sleeping bag near the hearth, beside a small cache of firewood. He selected a few logs, their dryness a small comfort, and coaxed a fire to life. It caught with hesitant crackles and pops, bleeding a meager warmth into the chill air, a welcome sensation against his face. His purpose here was simple. Days untethered, silence embraced. Crowds frayed his edges. Isolation promised restoration. Rest. Walks through the misted woods, a mind swept clean. He anticipated nothing more profound than quietude. The first day dissolved uneventfully. Silas mapped the cabin's small geography, checked window seals against the damp, arranged his meager provisions. Outside, the fog held its ground, a relentless white wall. As dusk bled into the room, he lit candles he'd brought, preferring their soft, manageable flicker to the dubious lanterns hanging inertly. Later, cocooned in his sleeping bag near the hearth's dying glow, the fire's embers pulsing faintly, he listened. Only the wind's sigh through the pines and the sporadic snap of unseen branches reached him. Sleep began its slow, heavy descent. Then, a whisper of sound from above, a faint footfall. Silas's eyes snapped open. The loft hung directly overhead. Old wood settling, he reasoned, the structure breathing in the cool night. But it came again, clearer this time, the distinct pressure and release on a protesting board. He went utterly still, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He stared upward into the oppressive darkness, waiting. Silence stretched, taut. Then another step, a slow, deliberate creak. A lump formed in his throat. Wind, he told himself, the cabin groaning under temperature shifts. His eyes ached from staring, but nothing more disturbed the quiet. Exhaustion eventually claimed him. Morning found him stiff-necked, the fire dead, his breath pluming in the frigid air. He sat up, scanning the room. Everything remained untouched. No alien prints marred the dust. No sign of forced entry. He tried to dismiss the unease clinging like the damp outside. Opening the front door offered little relief. The fog remained a dense curtain, swallowing the treetops, beating cold moisture on his jacket. The wind carried a raw edge that stung his eyes. He ventured a short circuit around the cabin, boots sinking slightly into the sodden ground. He listened for birdsong, but only the wind's mournful passage through the branches answered. The world felt suspended, muted. Back inside, coffee brewed with a quiet hiss on the stove. He sat at the table, nursing the acrid liquid from a chipped mug. The night's sounds echoed in his mind, one part of him striving for rational dismissal, the other replaying the creaks with chilling fidelity. After coffee, he busied himself with minor tidying, wiping away layers of dust, rechecking the window frames. Damp, yes, but solid. Activity, he hoped, would quell the rising anxiety. That afternoon, the cabin itself seemed to murmur. Soft popping sounds emanated from the walls, the timber flexing, he assumed. Floorboards complained under his weight, expectedly, but subtler noises intruded, almost sighs, brief exhalations seeming to issue from the room's shadowed corners. Each time, he froze, scanning, finding nothing. The cabin felt possessed of its own quiet respiration. He tried the small radio he'd packed, Static was its only offering. He ate cold rations, planned a simple supper, forcing normalcy onto the unsettling canvas. As darkness reclaimed the cabin, he built the fire higher, its flames casting leaping shadows, animating the periphery. He lit his candles, placing them strategically. Near the hearth, he tried to lose himself in an old magazine, unearthed from a drawer, its pages yellowed, its stories relics of another time. But his attention strayed, eyes constantly flicking to the room's edges, ears straining against the wind's moan and the fire's chatter. Eventually, eye strain and restlessness forced him up. He stretched, the unease of physical weight. Time for bed, though sleep felt distant. He unrolled the sleeping bag, leaving one candle burning on a nearby stool, a small, perhaps foolish, beacon against the encroaching dark. His eyelids grew heavy, consciousness fraying. Then, a definite shift in the room's atmosphere. The candle flame wavered violently. A low groan resonated from the structure above. Silas jolted upright, heart slamming against his sternum. As he watched, the candle on the stool guttered and died. He rubbed his eyes, vision struggling to adapt. Only the ember's faint orange pulse pierced the profound blackness. A chill, unrelated to the air temperature, traced patterns on his skin. The windows rattled with a gust, but beneath it, he sensed something else, something within. His pulse surged, breath catching in his throat. Slowly, leveraging himself with one hand on the floor, he rose. A scraping sound tore through the silence, originating from the loft, the distinct drag of furniture across wood. Silas moved to the base of the stairs, peering into the impenetrable void above. He listened, straining. A faint shuffling, hesitant but undeniable, moved across the overhead floor. Slow, measured footsteps. Vertigo threatened, but he forced the air from his lungs. "Hello?" The word emerged thin, brittle. Silence answered, thick and watchful. His throat constricted. His legs felt like water. He retreated to the relative safety of his sleeping bag, pulling it around him like armor, eyes locked on the stairwell until sheer fatigue blurred his vision and dragged him under. The following dawn brought the same biting cold, the same ache in his back. Pushing himself up, he chafed his arms, glancing immediately towards the stairs. Nothing. The candle had bled wax down the stool's leg, a solidified tear. He poked listlessly at the fireplace ashes, the memory of the loft's sounds stark and undeniable, not imagined. Footsteps. The day passed under a pall of tension. Bread and canned food were choked down. He compelled himself outdoors again, into the persistent fog. The cabin dissolved behind him as he picked his way across the hillside. Trees loomed, trunks slick and dark, pressing close. The silence was immense, broken only by the wind stirring unseen branches, and once, the distant crack of a falling limb. He walked until the landscape became alien, a knot of panic tightening in his chest. He hurried back, the sight of the cabin through the mist bringing a perverse sense of relief, mingled with dread. Late afternoon saw the temperature plummet. Shivering, Silas built a new fire. While it caught, he prowled the cabin, a restless energy driving him. He opened cabinets, peered beneath furniture, and, yielding to a morbid curiosity, ascended to try the loft's inner door again. It remained stubbornly fixed, resisting his push as if braced from the other side. His palm grew slick against the knob. He let go, breathing heavily, deliberately not pondering what might lie beyond. Evening deepened. He lit more candles than before, one at the stairbase, one on the table, another near his bedding, seeking to banish shadows. He sat before the fire, thoughts racing, an animal trapped, a hidden intruder, or his own mind, fraying in the isolation. He fought sleep, determined to remain vigilant. Around midnight, the candle flames began to twitch erratically. The air grew heavy, expectant. Then, faint as a breath against his ear, his name whispered, repeated, seemingly from the walls themselves, every muscle locked. He scanned the room, seeking a draft, finding none. The whisper felt intimate, invasive. He surged to his feet, legs unsteady, heart pounding a frantic rhythm. He spoke aloud, a defiant sound, though the words were lost to his own panic. Abruptly, the candle on the table extinguished. Then the one by the stairs flickered and died. Gooseflesh prickled his arms. He snatched the last candle, shielding its flame with a trembling hand. A floorboard creaked directly behind him. His stomach plunged. He spun around, seeing only deeper darkness where the firelight didn't reach. But the sense of presence was overwhelming, a silent weight moving across the floor. His mouth was dust. He stumbled backward until his shoulders met the cold wall. "Run!" his mind screamed. "Run for the door!" But his limbs were lead. Pinned against the wood, the final candle flame quivered, then winked out. Total darkness. His own breathing roared in his ears. His heart hammered against his ribs. The room pulsed with soft clicks, sighs, creaks, a living entity surrounding him. He thought he heard breathing, shallow and close, not his own. Reaching out blindly, his hand found the back of the wobbly chair. He gripped it, anchoring himself. A frantic fumble in his pocket produced a lighter. Sparks flew. Then a tiny flame leaped, pushing back the oppressive blackness by mere inches. He lurched towards the hearth, feeding slivers of kindling onto the embers. After several tense attempts, a fragile flame took hold. He knelt there, lighter still clutched tight, every nerve stretched taut. He listened. The fire crackled, grew, casting a slightly wider circle of hesitant light. He waited, straining for any sound beyond the flames. Minutes crawled by. The sense of proximity remained, palpable but invisible. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the chill. Gradually, the immediate pressure seemed to recede. The fire's glow offered a small island of light. Knees trembling, Silas stood, scanning the stairs, empty. The front door, closed. He wiped his brow, forcing slower breaths. His hands felt clammy. Retrieving his flashlight, he thumbed it on. The beam sliced through the gloom. He swept it across the floor, the walls. Nothing disturbed. No footprints, no marks. His teeth chattered, a combination of cold and residual terror. Sleep was impossible. He spent the remainder of the night with his back to the hearth, flashlight in one hand, lighter in the other, feeding the fire whenever it dipped low. His nerves were frayed wires. Every settling groan of the cabin made him jump. The whispering persisted intermittently, never quite forming words, like distant voices calling his name, sometimes from within the walls, sometimes from the void above. His scalp prickled with each recurrence. He clung to the fire's heat, the scent of wood smoke, desperate anchors in the swirling unease. Dawn arrived, not with relief, but with weary resignation. Gray light seeped through the windows, rendering the cabin's interior stark and mundane. He forced down some food, his stomach churning, swallowing difficult. His hands shook too badly to hold the mug steady. A decision had to be made. Flight warred with a stubborn reluctance to be driven out. But the peace he'd sought had curdled into this gnawing dread. He began to pack, folding the sleeping bag, gathering spent candles, clearing his traces. The cabin seemed to watch, the air charged, prickling the back of his neck. He resisted the constant urge to look over his shoulder. To stay longer felt like courting madness. The feeling of unseen movement behind the walls, beneath the floor, was a constant pressure. Outside, loading the car, the air was raw, wet. The fog clung stubbornly to the hillside. He slammed the trunk, casting a final glance at the cabin. Its old timbers seemed to blur into the mist, indistinct, secretive. Inside the car, engine turning over, a wave of anxiety washed through him. The finality of escape. Pulse racing, sweat filming his temples. He reversed, pointing the car downhill. He focused intently on the winding track as he descended. The wind gusted, sending wraiths of fog swirling across his path. A single glance in the rearview mirror showed the cabin's roofline dissolving, swallowed by the white oblivion. His mouth was parched, knuckles white on the steering wheel. He pressed onward, needing distance. The whispers were gone, but his heart still hammered. The cabin's presence felt like a shadow clinging just beyond sight, around the next bend. Only when the hill fell away behind him and the air began to clear did the tension start to ebb. Patches of bruised sky appeared, his shoulders unlocked, muscles protesting. Breath steadied. He realized how little he'd blinked. Slow, deep inhalations. By the time he reached the main highway, feeling returned to his numb fingers. A profound exhaustion settled over him, his eyes burning. He swore never to return. No more nights listening to footsteps pacing the loft. No more disembodied whispers weaving through the walls. No more sensing that silent watcher in the dark. The sanctuary he'd envisioned had become a crucible, forging a deeper anxiety than any he'd known. The dark corners, the creaking boards overhead, these images were now etched into his memory. The cabin had released him physically, but its echo lingered, a cold spot in the back of his mind, patiently waiting. He had no intention of answering its silent summons. Three sunrises ago, I took possession of this towering Victorian edifice. Its allure resided in the cathedral-esque ceilings, the intricate filigree of its carved doorframes, details that sang from the listing photographs, offered at a sum surprisingly modest for such grandeur. Yet, the very first night breathed an anomaly into the air. A miasma, stale and persistent, clung to the corridors, thickening near the shadowed aperture of the back staircase. Sleep became a fraught endeavor, punctuated by creaks that mimicked no natural settling. Instead, a slow, dragging cadence suggested clandestine movement just beyond my awareness, a phantom tread on the aged floorboards. Several times I rose, a hunter in my own home, only to find the stillness undisturbed, the silence mocking. Daylight rendered the main floors luminous, sunbeams lancing through tall windows, yet shadows pooled stubbornly in every corner, defying illumination. A fine film of dust, the accumulated breath of abandonment, frosted the sills and skirted the walls in untouched territories. The house, vacant for an indeterminate period, was expectedly layered in time's detritus. Cobwebs spun like spectral lace. Less anticipated was the unshakable perception of being observed, a prickling awareness that compelled constant furtive glances over my shoulder. Peripheral flickers resolved into nothing more than sheet-draped furniture or the vacant yawn of a hallway upon direct confrontation. The second day unveiled the attic portal. Sequestered at the terminus of a brief passage on the uppermost floor, it presented itself as a formidable barrier. Heavy timber, bound by stout iron hinges. Thick, oxidized chains, coiled around the handle, cinched tight by a padlock consumed by rust. The metal felt ancient, scabrous beneath my touch. The lock, when tested, remained utterly intransigent. Pressing an ear flat against the wood yielded only silence, a profound emptiness that paradoxically amplified my curiosity. Why such fortifications? No fissure offered passage for the eye. A curt call to Ms. Albright, the agent who'd facilitated the sale, proved fruitless. The previous occupants, she claimed, had offered no history of the attic, dismissing it as mere repository for forgotten clutter. Her indifference stoked my intrigue. That evening found me transfixed before the door, fingers tracing the cold links of the chain, a nascent conviction solidifying within me. This space, now mine, demanded exploration. Restlessness claimed me on the third evening. Downstairs, the living room bore the nascent shape of home. Furniture wrestled into place, my muscles singing with the strain of relocation. Yet repose remained elusive. An unseen current drew me upward, inevitably, until I stood once more before the chained threshold. The crowbar, nestled amongst tools in the boot of my car, became an imperative. Consequences dissolved, only the need to know remained. Retrieving the steel lever, I returned, my pulse a frantic drum against my ribs. The effort sent tremors through my hands. The padlock emitted a tortured groan under duress, the chain rattling a frantic percussion against the wood. Several jarring impacts later, the shackle yielded with a definitive snap. The chains slackened, heavy and limp, as I pulled them free. Turning the knob, the wood resisted, swollen perhaps by years of damp immobility, before surrendering with a protracted, resonant creak. Beyond lay a narrow flight of stairs, ascending into absolute darkness. The overhead bulb was defunct, granting only a suggestion of dust-laden floorboards at the summit. The smell assaulted me instantly. Desiccated timber, stagnant air, and an underlying note, faint but distinct, of mildewed fabric. Fumbling for my phone, I activated its torch, the beam slicing through the gloom, illuminating a blizzard of dancing dust motes. Each step upward was a deliberate placement, the wood complaining shrilly beneath my weight. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm in my ears. Sweat traced cold paths down my neck. Reaching the apex, I swept the light across the expanse. Amorphous shapes huddled beneath shrouds of white sheeting. Chairs, perhaps, a dresser, hulking trunks. Cobwebs draped from the rafters like macabre bunting. My beams snagged on peculiar markings etched into the heavy wooden beams overhead. Symbols, they seemed, carved deep, some crudely filled with black pigment. Circles intertwined with triangles, arcane squiggles defying logical interpretation. scattered irregularly across the timbers. The light found a small clutch of books resting atop a diminutive table in the far corner, their bindings thick, worn, and strangely discolored. Moving towards them, disturbing the sheet half veiling the table, sent up a plume of dust that caught in my throat. The titles, glimpsed on the spines, were rendered in scripts utterly foreign, the letters sharp, angular, almost serrated. Touching one, the cover felt like roughened, ancient hide. Before I could investigate further, a sound intruded, a whisper, or perhaps a murmur, insidious and low. Initially, I dismissed it as a draft, snaking through some unseen fissure in the roof. Then it recurred, a soft, sibilant current that seemed to coil around me. I held my breath, the cone of light trembling in my grasp. Forcing a measured inhale, I listened intently. The whispering intensified, yet retained its elusive quality, seeming to emanate from just behind me, or hovering at the very edge of sight. I spun, torchlight stabbing wildly into the shadows. The susurrus ceased abruptly, revealing only dust motes and shrouded forms. A constriction tightened in my chest. My stomach churned. The wind, I insisted silently. This old attic must be riddled with drafts. But the sound bore no resemblance to wind, nor to the familiar groans of an aging structure. Hesitantly, I approached a sheeted object to my right, resembling an old armchair. Pulling back the covering revealed torn upholstery, one corner of the seat disturbingly damp, as if from a long-ago spill, marked by a faint, spreading stain. A sour, unidentifiable odor emanated from the fabric. The murmuring recommenced, this time intimately close, brushing against my left ear. I whirled, nearly losing my grip on the phone. My mouth was instantly arid. The sound vanished the moment I faced its apparent source. The flashlight illuminated only empty space near the attic stairs. Nothing tangible resided there, yet my skin prickled, the fine hairs on my nape erecting in primal alarm. Retreating a few paces towards the attic's center, dizziness washed over me. My breathing had become rapid, shallow gasps. "I am alone," I chanted inwardly, attempting to quell the rising panic, but the conviction of unseen scrutiny remained unshakable. My gaze fell upon one of the sheet-draped trunks. Lifting the fabric, I nudged the trunk tentatively with my foot. Silence. Setting the phone atop its lid, I wrestled with the stiff latch. After several strained attempts, it sprang open with a protesting pop, releasing a wave of musty air so potent it made me gag. Inside lay more books, alongside loose sheaves of parchment covered in frantic, uneven handwriting. Some pages bore sketches of the same enigmatic symbols adorning the rafters. Others contained dense paragraphs in that baffling, jagged script. A faint scratching intruded from behind me, the distinct sound of nails drawn across wood. My scalp tingled. Pivoting sharply, I raised the phone. The beam landed on the far wall, illuminating a large symbol rendered in what looked like faded, dried blood, or perhaps crimson paint. It dominated the wooden plank, a circle encompassing a star-like form, its lines uneven, the pigment having dripped in dark rivulets down the wood. The color, though faded, retained a disturbing, blotchy intensity. My throat constricted. I realized I'd stopped breathing again. My heart pounded with a force that made me feel faint. Slowly, cautiously, I stepped towards the marked wall, the floorboards groaning a funereal protest beneath my feet. The whispering returned, louder now, coalescing into a chorus of faint but urgent voices, seemingly emanating from every corner simultaneously. A shifting, disorienting polyphony. Sweat beaded on my temples. The attic seemed to darken, swallowing the edges of my flashlight beam. I pressed a hand against the wall beside the symbol. The wood was unnaturally cold, colder than the ambient air. A subtle vibration pulsed beneath my fingertips, a thrumming resonance within the very structure of the house. I snatched my hand back as if burned, wiping my clammy palm against my jeans. The murmurs began to assume a pattern, a low guttural hum, ascending briefly in pitch, then dropping, repeating in a hypnotic cycle. Leave, a rational part of my mind screamed. Come back later, with lights, with someone else. Yet I remained rooted, paralyzed for several heartbeats by a morbid fascination. What were these symbols? What secrets did these cryptic texts hold? Why had this space been so fiercely secured? My eyes drifted back to the table, to the stack of forbidding books. Returning to them, I lifted the topmost volume. Its cover was stiff, bearing the ghost of an embossed design, too worn to decipher. Opening it gingerly revealed pages thin and brittle with age, yellowed like old bones. They teemed with symbols and brief passages in that impenetrable language. Interspersed were crude sketches, creatures and faces, some recognizably human or animal, others distorted, with grotesque proportions. As I turned the fragile leaves, the attic air grew thick, suffocating. My vision swam at the periphery. The whispers intensified, merging into a steady, oppressive drone. My hands trembled violently. I had to set the book down before it slipped from my grasp. A knot tightened in my stomach. Swallowing against the dryness in my throat, I fought to regulate my breathing. A sudden thump echoed behind me, the sound of something substantial hitting the floor. I spun, torchlight flaring. One of the sheets lay in a crumpled heap, revealing the object it had concealed. A tall, narrow cabinet, its door slightly ajar. I hadn't touched it. A wave of revulsion washed over me. I had no desire to approach. My knuckles were white where I gripped the crowbar. Taking a hesitant step, I paused, my limbs feeling leaden, my heart a frantic bird beating against my ribs. Exhaling raggedly, I forced myself forward, one deliberate step at a time, until I reached the cabinet. Using the tip of the crowbar, I nudged the door further open. Inside, shelves held an array of small glass jars, most empty and veiled in dust. One, however, contained a thick, dark substance, congealed and tar-like, perhaps dried ink or paint. I recoiled from touching it. The floorboards creaked again, directly behind me. My pulse leaped. I whirled around to confront emptiness. The whispering surged, seeming to press against my eardrums, accompanied by a strange, mountain pressure within my skull. My vision pulsed momentarily. I staggered sideways, bracing myself against the cabinet. Its door rattled against the crowbar's shaft. Frantically, I swept the light around, seeking the source, finding nothing. Then, a wave of intense cold washed over my shoulders, descending from the rafters like an icy phantom breath. I shivered violently, gooseflesh erupting on my arms. Raw instinct screamed, "Get out, now." Gritting my teeth, I snatched the phone from the trunk lid and lurched towards the stairs. The instant my foot landed on the top step, the phone's light flickered erratically, the screen glitching. Panic seized me. I nearly pitched forward but caught the banister. steadying myself. I descended rapidly, stumbling on the final step. Reaching the landing, I expelled a shuddering breath, slammed the attic door shut, and leaned heavily against it, chest heaving, sweat plastering my hair to my face. I stared down the familiar hallway, desperately trying to regain composure. The house felt preternaturally silent, yet the dense charged energy of the attic clung to me like a shroud. My arms felt weak, boneless. My mouth was parched, my mind a chaotic whirl of fragmented images and sounds. The insidious murmuring echoed still within my ears. Sliding down the wall, I sat heavily on the floor, the crowbar resting beside me. I glanced at my phone. 10% battery remaining. It had been over half full when I ascended. Wiping my face on my sleeve, I focused on slowing my breathing, though the tension remained coiled deep within my muscles. The books, the symbols, the jars, the rusted padlock. Was it meant to keep intruders out, or something else in? The horrifying realization struck me. The attic door was unchained. I considered retrieving the links, but the broken lock rendered them useless. I had no replacement. Resolving to simply ensure the door was closed, I rose. As my hand reached for the knob, a subtle, dry scraping sound whispered from beyond the wood. I froze, fingers hovering inches from the knob. My heartbeat accelerated anew. Images flooded my mind. The crimson symbol pulsing on the wall, the disembodied chorus, the deep hum. My fingertips felt numb, cold. Swallowing became difficult. I turned the knob firmly, securing the door, then pressed my ear against the wood for a tense moment. No distinct sounds emerged, only a faint, persistent crackle, like distant, dry leaves rustling. I walked away, my legs stiff, unsteady. Downstairs, I flicked on every light switch I passed, bathing the lower floor in stark illumination. I found myself standing in the center of the living room, breathing heavily, thoughts racing uncontrollably. The urge to call someone warred with the impossibility of explaining. My phone displayed missed messages from friends, inquiring about the move. I couldn't articulate the experience, felt a flush of embarrassment at my profound disquiet, yet the raw edge of fear kept my hands trembling. Sinking onto the sofa, I attempted to find calm, but my eyes darted towards the ceiling with every creak. This old house was naturally vocal, prone to settling groans, but these sounds felt imbued with intention, like deliberate shifts of weight overhead. The memory of those painted symbols tightened my stomach. They defied explanation, and I couldn't shake the oppressive certainty that I had disturbed something ancient and best left slumbering. Eventually, my heart rate subsided, though a residual tingling vibrated in my arms. Drenched in sweat, my shirt clinging unpleasantly, I rose and methodically locked every door on the main floor, an illogical act in an empty house. Yet, it offered a sliver of perceived security. I checked the windows too, extinguishing most lights, leaving only a single small lamp burning like a lonely sentinel. I retreated to my bedroom. Shutting the door, I stood in the dimness, listening. For the moment, the house held its breath. No murmurs, no scraping. A dull ache throbbed behind my eyes. Sleep seemed a distant, unattainable shore. Crawling into bed fully clothed, my body felt utterly depleted, yet my mind remained hyper-alert, relentlessly replaying the attic's horrors. The angular script, the distorted drawings, the malevolent red sigil on the wall, the pervasive hum that seemed to track my movements. The tension settled like a physical weight upon my chest. I shifted beneath the covers, perspiring despite the room's chill. After what felt like an eternity, I succumbed to a fitful, shallow sleep, plagued by fractured images of the attic, the distant murmuring a constant underscore whenever the symbol materialized in my mind's eye. Dawn found me stiff, unrested, yet grimly determined. Daylight might dispel the phantoms, offer answers. I needed to confront the attic, couldn't allow it to loom over me, a palpable threat within my own walls. Cold water splashed on my face, a clean shirt donned. I ascended the stairs once more, slowly, deliberately. The door remained closed. My hand hovered over the knob, hesitation a cold counterpoint to my racing pulse. Opening it, I peered up the narrow staircase. Hallway light offered better visibility than the previous night, yet the upper reaches remained steeped in shadow. The broken chain lay coiled on the threshold, shedding flakes of rust like dried blood. The stale, fetid air wafted down. Forcing one foot onto the first step, I paused, straining my ears. Only the sound of my own ragged breathing answered. That oppressive pressure returned, the space itself seeming to contract around me. My palms grew slick. Swallowing hard, I climbed several more steps, my head now level with the attic floor. I stopped again. Without the flashlight, its battery replenishing downstairs, I could discern little beyond the immediate threshold. Should I retrieve it? Just then, a faint shuffle disturbed the stillness. It originated from deeper within the attic, near the trunk or perhaps the table with the books. A quick, furtive scrape, followed by profound silence. My fragile courage evaporated. A visceral chill traced its path down my spine, a knot tightening low in my gut. I retreated down the stairs, pulling the door firmly shut behind me. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face whatever waited in that dusty gloom. My breath came in shaky bursts as I wiped my damp palms on my jeans. Descending to the main floor, I tried to ignore the frantic pounding in my chest. Though I held the deed to this house, mastery felt like a distant illusion. Something resided upstairs, something that craved attention, something patient, long dormant, now stirred. And I, its unwitting catalyst, dreaded discovering what might happen now that it was awake. My fascination with obsolete machines, the ghosts of technology past, has been a lifelong affair. Yet, I never imagined one relic, plucked from the dust of a neighborhood estate sale, would unravel my nights into threads of unbearable dread. It was a war-era radio, vintage, imposing. Its bakelite shell bore the honorable scars of time, deep scratches etched into its flanks, paint chipped away near the dials like faded campaign medals. It exuded an aroma of settled dust and the cold tang of aged metal. I parted with more cash than usual, swayed by the seller's insistence on its provenance, a hushed tale of soldiers relaying coded secrets during some unnamed, shadowed conflict. Dramatic, yes, but the hook of curiosity was set deep. I brought it home, nesting it on a living room shelf, a silent sentinel between my hulking old projector and a reel-to-reel player dreaming of bygone sounds. For days, it remained just that, an object, dormant. I'd tested it once, the ritual familiar. Plug it in, twist the hefty tuning knob, coax the volume dial. Static answered, the speaker crackling with the comforting rasp of antiquity. Satisfied in its inertness, I switched it off, consigning it to the periphery of my thoughts. Then, perhaps a week hence, the dead hour of 3 a.m. summoned me from sleep. A low, insistent hum permeated the silence. Drifting from my bedroom, I found the living room bathed in the radio's eerie luminescence. It was alive. The dial cast a sickly yellow glow. My heart began a frantic tattoo against my ribs. I distinctly recalled flipping the power switch down. As I drew nearer, the air thickened with whispers, not one voice, but a multitude, overlapping, frantic, like desperate secrets tumbling over one another. I strained to decipher words, grasping only fragments, disjointed syllables lost in the electronic ether. My gaze fixed on the power switch. It remained resolutely in the off position. A chill, sharp and visceral, traced my spine. I yanked the plug from the wall. The whispers ceased instantly. I stood there, a fine sheen of sweat cooling on my skin, despite the room's chill, breathing shallowly. A tremor started in my hands, that familiar prickling heat beneath the skin, signaling the intrusion of the truly bizarre. Leaving the cord dangling, I retreated to bed, seeking refuge in the futile hope of forgetting. The following day, logic offered flimsy reassurances, a loose connection perhaps, or a faulty switch jammed between states. I clung to the explanation of malfunctioning mechanics, but the night refused my rationalizations. Again, the clock's illuminated numerals neared 3:07 a.m. this time. Again, the whispers bled through the silence, louder now, more insistent. Though my bedroom door was closed, their origin was unmistakable. I navigated the darkened apartment to the living room. The radio pulsed with its spectral light, the speaker emitting a chaotic chorus of interwoven voices. It wasn't mere noise anymore. It possessed the texture of a crowd, murmuring urgently, just below the threshold of comprehension. My heart hammered, a frantic drumbeat in my ears, tension coiled tight in my neck. I lunged for the power cord, only to find it lying inert on the floor, already disconnected. Yet, the machine lived, breathing its impossible chorus. In a surge of frustrated fear, I seized the heavy cabinet, shaking it once, hard. The static flared, momentarily drowning the voices, but the transmission continued. A nauseating knot tightened in my stomach. The fine hairs on my arms prickled erect. The volume of the voices surged, cresting into a wave of near shouting before abruptly collapsing back into a sibilant rush. And then, cutting through the static, sharp and clear. My name. Elias. Spoken by one distinct voice within the spectral choir. Silence fell like a hammer blow. The dial light flickered once, twice, and died. I remained frozen for a long minute, the echo of my name reverberating in the sudden quiet, my pulse a frantic bird trapped in my chest. My breath hitched, my throat felt scraped raw. With trembling hands, I lifted the radio. It felt strangely heavy, dense with its secrets. I carried it, almost running, into the harsh fluorescent glare of the kitchen, setting it down heavily on the table. I stared, half expecting it to flare back to life, but it remained stubbornly silent, a block of scarred bakelite and cold metal. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. My waking thoughts circled obsessively around the whispers, the impossible power, my name plucked from the ether. Had I dreamt it? Was I caught in some liminal state between waking and sleep, conjuring phantoms from static? The notion of calling an electrician felt absurd. What could wiring explain about an unplugged device? Sharing this with anyone, Even Silas, my technically minded friend, felt like inviting ridicule, a confession of encroaching madness. So I wrestled with it alone, trying to bury the unease beneath the mundane routines of work. By day, the radio sat on the kitchen table, looking innocuous, almost quaint. Then came the fifth night. The clock ticked towards 3, and a familiar dread coiled in my gut. The frantic susurrus began, pulling me from a restless doze. I forced myself upright, feet hitting the cold floor, and walked towards the kitchen. Under the stark overhead light, the radio glowed. Its dial wasn't tuned to any recognizable station, but hovered on some liminal frequency, a space between signals I'd never seen illuminated before. The voices were a storm now, a terrifying blend of whispers and distant screams, clawing at the edges of my sanity. Hesitantly, my hand reached for the tuning knob, fingers tingling with a nervous energy. The instant my skin made contact, the cacophony dropped. A single clear voice emerged, uttering the name of my closest friend, Clara. Then, my boss, Mr. Harding. Then, chillingly, my own name again, Elias. I froze, breath caught in my throat, pulse hammering at my temples. My body screamed to flee, but some morbid curiosity, or perhaps paralysis, held me fast. Hello? The word emerged as a thin, reedy tremor. The static hissed, a drawn-out breath. Then, a different voice surfaced, male, rough-edged, imbued with a chilling urgency. Go to the old warehouse on Maple Street. Silence crashed down again. The light faded. I twisted the dial. Nothing. Utterly dead. The remainder of that night was spent huddled on the living room couch, my mind a frantic racecourse. The old warehouse on Maple Street, a skeletal structure in a forgotten corner of town, a place whispered about, glimpsed peripherally on drives across the city, mostly derelict, swallowed by weeds and neglect. Why there? The command resonated with illogic, a siren call towards potential danger. Yet, the chilling intimacy of hearing my name, Clara's, Harding's, it felt targeted, personal, a hook baited specifically for me. Cold sweat slicked my palms. My heart refused to settle into a normal rhythm. For 2 days, an unnerving quiet descended. The radio remained on the kitchen table, an object I consciously avoided looking at directly. I kept the volume knob turned fully counterclockwise, a futile gesture against its autonomous power. Each night, I braced for the inevitable 3 a.m. summons, but silence reigned. The urge to dispose of it grew, to hurl it into the river, to shatter its bakelite shell against the pavement. But each time the thought solidified, a visceral wave of nausea washed over me, accompanied by a dull ache spreading behind my eyes. The memory of the voices would surge, sharp and intrusive. Was it fear of reprisal, or a perverse, deepening curiosity? I couldn't be sure. I tried drowning the unease in flickering television screens, hollow phone conversations, anything to fill the void. But the radio's presence lingered, a shadow at the edge of my thoughts. On the 8th night, the reprieve ended. Precisely at the appointed hour, the familiar crackle sliced through the stillness. I bolted upright in bed, the sensation akin to being jolted awake within a recurring nightmare. In the kitchen, the radio was already deep into its spectral broadcast, the speaker cone visibly trembling with the force of the overlapping whispers. A low, pervasive hum vibrated through the room, so intense I felt it in my teeth. I clenched my jaw against the rising panic. Then, as before, the cacophony subsided, making way for a single utterance. A voice, deep, slow, resonant with an unsettling calm, stated flatly, "Go there, don't wait." That was all, but it landed with the force of a physical blow. I stood rooted, staring at the radio as if it were a coiled viper, poised to strike. Eventually, I retreated to the couch, sleep an impossibility, the deep voice echoing relentlessly in the hollows of my mind. Morning found me ragged, unrested, my limbs heavy, eyes burning. Coffee did little to dispel the fog of exhaustion. My thoughts, however frantic, kept circling back to Maple Street. I resolved to scout the location in the safety of daylight, a reconnaissance mission to appease something. Around noon, gripping the steering wheel with slick palms, I navigated the city towards the warehouse. It loomed behind a sagging chain-link fence, exactly as I remembered. A monument to decay, scarred with graffiti, its vacant window sockets staring blindly. Dumpsters overflowed nearby, seemingly untouched for years. No vehicles, no flicker of life. The gate was secured with a thick rust-pitted chain and padlock. I parked across the street, observing for several minutes. Silence, stillness, disappointment warred with a vague sense of relief. What had I expected? A cryptic sign? A shadowy figure beckoning me closer? There was nothing but dereliction. I drove home, my mind a whirlpool of unanswered questions, the nagging unease undiminished. That evening, I sat in the dim light of my living room, watching the radio from a distance, still unplugged. I'd killed most of the lights, wanting to catch the first hint of its spectral glow. Hours passed in silence. Just as I considered abandoning my vigil for bed, the faintest crackle reached my ears. My muscles seized, my heart renewed its frantic rhythm. A weak luminescence bloomed behind the dial. Palms sweating, I approached. The voices erupted louder, more forceful than ever before. Names spilled forth, friends, colleagues, acquaintances I barely knew. A cascade of familiar identities woven into the frantic, unintelligible tapestry of whispers. A wave of profound nausea churned in my gut. It felt like eavesdropping on 1,000 frantic confessions, secrets spilling too fast to grasp. Kneeling, I pressed my ear closer to the speaker grill. A phrase emerged from the chaos, repeated insistently. "Come now, come now." A violent burst of static, sharp as a gunshot, and then silence. Sleep was impossible. I paced the apartment like a caged animal, checking window latches, double-checking the door locks, besieged by a primal sense of imminent intrusion. Around 4 a.m, exhaustion claimed me briefly on the couch. Sunlight filtering through the blinds woke me to a stiff neck and an aching back. The radio sat inert on the kitchen table. Shower, breakfast, the motions of normalcy felt hollow. I couldn't continue like this, suspended between terror and inaction. A decision pressed upon me: destroy the cursed thing, or obey its summons. Yet, every time I envisioned taking a hammer to it, the same paralyzing dread washed over me. A physical force, a punch to the solar plexus, temples throbbing, chest constricting. I called Silas. He has a knack for circuitry, an appreciation for vintage tech. Interested in an old war-era radio? I asked, trying to sound casual. He chuckled, asking if it worked. Yes, I admitted. Sort of. I confessed it was causing issues, that I needed it gone. He offered to swing by, take a look. Hope flickered, Perhaps offloading it onto someone else would break the connection. Silas arrived that evening. I handed him the heavy cabinet. The moment his fingers brushed the bakelite, the volume knob visibly rotated on its own. A single sharp whisper escaped the speaker. Silas dropped the radio onto the table as if burned, stepping back, his expression bewildered. What the hell was that? I told him everything, the words tumbling out in a disjointed, desperate stream. He listened, his initial skepticism slowly morphing into unease. Maybe we should open it up, he suggested. See if there's something extra inside, some hidden transmitter. We found a screwdriver and tackled the back panel. The screws were fused with age and rust, one sheared off completely under the torque. Silas shrugged, defeated for the moment. Need to bring my proper kit, he muttered, glancing nervously at the radio. I felt a pang of disappointment, yet also a sliver of relief. What horrors might we uncover within its chassis? He left, promising to return with better tools, leaving the radio and me to face the coming night. That night, 3 a.m. arrived with chilling punctuality. The radio flared to life. My name, Clara's name, other names I knew. Then, a new voice, cold and toneless. You have to come. It repeated the phrase over and over, each repetition gaining intensity, the volume swelling until the vibrations seemed to resonate in my bones. My ears rang. I clamped my hands over them, a futile gesture against the invasive sound. Then, abruptly, silence. The radio clicked off. Exhaustion had become my baseline state. A perpetual throb pulsed behind my eyes, underscored by dark circles beneath them. The urge to obliterate the radio was a constant burning desire, yet I felt an unshakable certainty that destruction was not the answer, that it would invite retribution. Irrational, perhaps, but the conviction was bone deep, a knot of pure dread tightening in my gut. I had to know. I had to follow the command, if only to understand the nature of this haunting, to find some clue, some way to sever this parasitic connection. The following night, I prepared. Jacket, sturdy boots, flashlight heavy in my pocket. Around 2:30 a.m., keys in trembling hand, I walked towards my car. The steering wheel felt cold beneath my clammy grip. My chest was tight with apprehension. I drove through deserted streets, the city asleep around me, headlights carving tunnels through the oppressive darkness. My gaze kept flicking to the rearview mirror, anticipating. I didn't know what. Maple Street. The warehouse loomed, a hulking silhouette against the moon-dusted sky. Silence pressed in, thick and watchful. The rusty chain and padlock still secured the gate. Parking across the street, I killed the engine and listened. Nothing but the faint hum of the city. Exiting the car, the cool night air felt sharp against my face, carrying the scent of damp concrete and decay. My heart hammered against my ribs, the sound loud in my ears as I approached the fence. I gave the chain a tentative tug. It rattled obscenely in the stillness. That wave of visceral wrongness washed over me. Don't do this. But inaction hadn't saved me either. My eyes traced the fence line until they found it, a section near the corner where the links were bent and pulled apart. I forced the jagged metal wider and squeezed through, tearing my jacket slightly on a sharp edge. My breath came in ragged bursts. Inside the perimeter, I switched on the flashlight. The beam sliced through the darkness, revealing a scene of utter dereliction. Smashed windows gaped like empty eye sockets. Peeling paint hung in strips. Broken glass and unidentifiable debris littered the ground. My footsteps crunched loudly on gravel as I moved towards a partially open side door, feeling terribly exposed. Still no voices, no sign of life. I placed a hand on the gritty metal door and pushed. It groaned open on protesting hinges, revealing a vast, cavernous interior. My flashlight beam swept across scattered crates, rusted metal beams, and puddles, reflecting the meager light. I took cautious steps forward, scanning the oppressive darkness, pulse erratic, sweat trickling down my spine. Any second, I expected the whispers to start, a figure to emerge from the shadows. Silence. Hello? My voice sounded thin, swallowed by the immense space, echoing unanswered. I moved deeper, the flashlight beam dancing across the debris. In a far corner, something resembling a makeshift workbench caught my eye. Approaching slowly, my light illuminated a collection of broken radios, similar in vintage to my own tormentor, alongside a pair of cracked headphones and scattered yellowed papers. My heart rate spiked. Had someone else been drawn here, collecting these haunted objects? I stepped closer. The papers were torn, covered in frantic scribbles, lists of frequencies, cryptic notes, diagrams I couldn't decipher. I spent several more minutes searching the immediate area, prodding at debris with my foot. Nothing. The warehouse was empty, save for these few enigmatic remnants. A strange mix of profound relief and sharp disappointment coursed through me. I'd braced for terror, for revelation. Instead, I found only emptiness, decay, and more questions. I retreated the way I came, squeezing back through the fence, my mind racing. Why here? What had I missed? The drive home was fraught with tension, my eyes constantly scanning the darkness behind me. As I pulled up to my apartment building and walked inside, my blood ran cold. Through the living room doorway, I saw it, the radio, glowing malevolently, on, unplugged. My body locked, my mouth went dry. I forced myself towards it. The whispers started immediately, but the tone had shifted. They sounded furious now, accusatory, like a multitude scolding me in hushed, sibilant tones. Though the words remained indistinct, the anger was palpable. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. I went there, I choked out, my voice barely audible. There was nothing. The whispers intensified into a crackling roar, then abruptly cut out. The radio clicked off. Now, I am ensnared in this horrifying loop. Every night, like clockwork, 3 a.m. arrives, and the radio awakens. The voices persist, sometimes demanding I return to the warehouse, sometimes issuing new cryptic instructions. They chant my name. They invoke the names of people I know, weaving a web of unnerving intimacy. Each time I contemplate escape, muster the resolve to finally rid myself of it, the psychic backlash is immediate and overwhelming. My thoughts fragment. A blinding headache descends. My vision blurs, and the physical act becomes impossible, as if an invisible force stays my hand. I haven't told Silas about the visit, about the escalating demands. How could he understand this intricate, invisible prison? I exist in a state of perpetual tension, forever waiting for the witching hour, for the spectral glow, for the chorus of the damned to begin. I am adrift, subject to the whims of this malevolent object. I don't know what it ultimately wants, and the strain is becoming unbearable. Yet, any attempt to formulate a plan for liberation, hurling it into a deep body of water, taking a sledgehammer to its core, dissolves into mental static and physical paralysis. I am trapped with this thing, tethered to it. Every night, I wait. I listen for the frantic whispers, for the commanding voice insisting I go back, do more, submit. No solution presents itself. No exit strategy seems viable. All I know is that with each passing night, the transmissions grow stronger, the pressure more intense, and I have no earthly idea what will happen when my resistance finally breaks. Necessity, a cold hand at my back, pushed me toward the graveyard shift at the orbital gas station, a lonely beacon marooned on the town's ragged fringe. Not the summit of ambition, true, but the rent demanded its sacrifice. An easy enough post, they'd assured me. Keep vigil, dispense fuel and sugary drinks to the nocturnal stragglers. Simple. My predecessor, a man whose eyes held the jittery look of someone perpetually glancing over his shoulder, had mumbled warnings. Get strange out here. But I dismissed them as hazing, the usual unsettling tales spun for the newcomer. 10 o'clock commenced my watch. For the initial hours, tranquility reigned, a profound stillness bordering on the absolute. Sporadic vehicles materialized from the darkness, phantoms briefly made real, their drivers purchasing gasoline or fleeting refreshment before dissolving back into the night. Mostly, I occupied the worn stool behind the counter, flipping through a tattered magazine, my gaze drifting habitually to the security monitors displaying their silent, grainy tableaus. Then, near one, the fragile piece fractured. The atmosphere grew leaden, the silence itself seeming to press inwards with tangible weight. Nerves, I told myself, the predictable consequence of solitude in this isolated pocket of fluorescence. But then, the aberrations began. A spectral chime from the door's electronic sentry announced an arrival. I looked up from my dog-eared paperback, expecting a weary traveler. Nothing. The glass door reflected only the sterile light within. The threshold lay undisturbed. A phantom customer? A technical hiccup, I reasoned, settling back. Minutes crawled by. Chime. Again, the bell, sharper this time, slicing the quiet. A tremor, cold and unwelcome, traced my spine. I rose, circumnavigated the counter, peered down aisles, stacked high with silent temptations. Emptiness greeted me. Just the low thrum of the coolers, the incessant buzz of overhead lighting. A faulty sensor, I told myself firmly, returning to my perch. Not long after, a soft grating sound whispered from the depths of an aisle. Indistinct at first, then resolving into a rhythmic scraping, like something being dragged laboriously across the linoleum. I strained my ears, pinpointing the source proving elusive, fetching a heavy torch from beneath the counter, its weight a small comfort. I ventured into the rows of merchandise, my pulse accelerating. I swept the beam down the corridor of chips and candy, orderly shelves, undisturbed dust motes dancing in the light. The scraping had ceased, leaving behind only the ambient hum of machinery. Returning to the counter, my eyes flickered across the bank of monitors. Different angles, same sterile emptiness, until my gaze snagged on the rear lot feed. Beyond the dumpster's hulking silhouette, half swallowed by the impenetrable ink of the night, stood a form, static given shape, utterly motionless. My breath hitched. Vagrant, bored teenager. I snatched the torch again and pushed through the back door into the biting air. The lot lay vacant, swept clean by the wind sighing through unseen trees. I swept the torch beam across the bins, the dumpster, the fence line. Nothing. Only the profound unease of a space recently occupied, a palpable wrongness. Locking the door felt less like security, more like sealing myself in. Back behind the counter, the monitors became my focus, a desperate vigil against the return of the shadowed watcher. My own mind turned traitor, conjuring phantasmal whispers, creaks from the structure settling, sounds that evaporated the instant I tried to locate them. The conviction grew, insidious and chilling. I was not alone. 3 o'clock tolled silently on my cheap watch. The door chimed again. This time, someone was there. Looming at the counter, swathed in a dark, heavy coat, a hood pulled low, eclipsing features. Hands, unnervingly thin, rested flat on the worn laminate. Skeletal. "Help you?" The words felt thick in my throat. Silence answered, profound and absolute. Beneath the cowl, I felt, rather than saw, a gaze lock onto mine, cold, penetrating, devoid of any discernible human warmth. The air grew thick, suffocating. "Need something?" I tried again, the query barely a breath. One long-fingered hand lifted, slowly, deliberately, pointing past me, toward the shadowed rear of the store. I risked a glance over my shoulder, saw only the familiar geometry of shelves, the mundane array of packaged goods. When I turned back, he was simply not there, vanished. No chime, no whisper of movement. The space he occupied now held only stale air and mounting panic. My hands trembled as I swept my eyes across the vacant store, then the monitors. No trace, as if conjured from the oppressive silence itself. I sank onto the stool, thoughts racing, a frantic scramble for logic in the face of the impossible. Flee, every instinct screamed. Abandon this place. But the shift remained, hours stretching like an eternity. A prank, I tried to rationalize, some elaborate hoax. Yet a deeper certainty resonated, cold and sharp. This was something else entirely. The remainder of the night bled into a tense, hyper-vigilant haze. Each tiny noise provoked a jolt. Every fleeting shadow sent my heart into frantic rhythm. The monitors remained clear, the store stubbornly empty until the blessed relief of dawn arrived with the morning attendant. I fled, offering no explanation for my pallor or trembling hands, escaping into the gray light. Driving home, the steering wheel slick in my grasp, the night's events replayed relentlessly. Never again, I vowed. Find another way, somewhere mundane, somewhere safe. But need remained a harsh taskmaster. A week wrestled with dwindling funds, and I found myself back in that glass box, the dread a physical weight. This time, I brought a small radio, hoping tinny rock anthems might ward off the encroaching strangeness, a bulwark against the silence. For hours, it seemed to work. Normalcy reigned, punctuated only by the occasional late-night customer. Perhaps fatigue and isolation had painted phantoms onto the canvas of the night before. Then, around 2, the bell sang its lonely note. Chime, empty doorway, closed door. My breath caught. Just the bell, I chanted internally, a fragile mantra. But the chant died when the scraping began anew, a dry, dragging friction from the chip aisle. Slow, measured, horribly distinct, it slithered closer. Flashlight clenched in a sweating palm, I crept toward the source, each footstep echoing unnaturally loud, In the charged quiet, the sound ceased abruptly as I rounded the corner. Nothing. Just the silent promise of salt and sugar on the shelves. As I pivoted to retreat, an icy exhalation ghosted across the nape of my neck, intimate and chilling. I whirled, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Empty aisle. Backing away, a frantic scramble, I regained the counter, breath ragged, shallow. My eyes shot to the monitors, and there, rear lot feed. The figure, standing in the deep shadows by the dumpster, indistinct but undeniably present, watching. No hesitation this time, no rationalization. Keys, wallet, jacket, snatched in a blur. I threw myself out the front door, into the relative sanity of the empty highway, the lonely outpost shrinking in my rearview mirror. A malignant eye fading into the darkness. I didn't slow down. The resignation came the next morning, swift and final. Some jobs aren't worth the price. From the threshold, a premonition whispered, faint as dust motes in the entryway light. Yet necessity, that relentless bargainer, had already bartered away my caution. Weeks adrift on the digital sea of house-sitting platforms, seeking sanctuary amidst the wreckage of my plans, had culminated in this. The listing for the Ashworth residence, an opulent suburban fortress, generous compensation, a mere weekend's commitment. It shimmered like a mirage, too perfect. Without a second thought, propelled by the undertow of need, my application winged its way toward them. The Ashworths, when we met, presented a veneer of affability, stretched thin over palpable distraction. Celeste Ashworth, sculpted and statuesque, her hair a lacquered marvel, conducted a breathless circuit of the premises. Her husband, Alistair, sharp-suited and sharper-eyed, lingered like a shadow in her wake. Leo is already tucked in, Celeste announced, a nod towards their 5-year-old. He's usually a sound sleeper, but his room is just there, should he stir. I offered a practiced nod. I'd watched Leo once before, months ago, but detected a tremor beneath her composed tone, a flicker of anxiety her meticulously smooth features couldn't quite conceal. One final detail, Alistair interjected, his voice crisp as starched linen, guiding me toward a sleek digital panel gleaming on the living room wall. We've enhanced the security protocols. This console provides access to all surveillance feeds. Surveillance? My mind snagged on the word. I recalled no cameras from my previous visit. Celeste emitted a brittle laugh, high and artificial. Oh, one simply must be vigilant these days, mustn't one? Do keep an eye on the monitors for us. It provides such peace of mind, knowing you're observing. Before queries could form, they were gone, swallowed by the evening in a wake of expensive fragrance and clipped farewells. Silence descended, thick and absolute, punctuated only by the almost subsonic thrum of the advanced security network. I drifted toward the kitchen, retrieving a cold drink from the cavernous refrigerator. The wall-mounted tablet beckoned, its screen a mosaic of shadowed spaces, the manicured lawn under moonlight, the vacant driveway, the upper landing steeped in darkness. As I took a tentative sip, my phone vibrated against my palm, an unfamiliar number. The message read, "I see you've made yourself comfortable." A glacial wave washed through me. Impossible. How? My gaze darted involuntarily toward the nearest camera lens, a tiny black eye suddenly imbued with profound menace. Fingers numb, I tapped out a reply. "Who is this?" Instantaneously, the screen lit again. A friend, watching over things, as you are. My pulse hammered against my ribs. A prank? Some bizarre test orchestrated by the Ashworths? Another message materialized. That shade of sapphire suits you. My breath hitched. I glanced down. The sweater I wore was indeed a deep blue. Whoever this was possessed a real-time vantage point. "Where are you?" I typed, the phone slick in my trembling hand. "How can you see me?" The reply was oblique. "I have my resources. Don't be alarmed. My purpose isn't harm. It's warning." Alarm bells didn't just ring, they clamored. "Flee," screamed one part of my brain. "Contact the authorities, call the Ashworths back, vanish into the night." But a morbid fascination, laced with undeniable terror, held me fast. Warn me about what? A pregnant pause stretched. Then, the Ashworths are not what they appear. This house, it holds secrets. Stay alert. A chill traced the length of my spine. I was formulating a demand for clarity when a distinct sound drifted from overhead. A soft, muffled thump. The sound of something substantial being placed gently down. My throat constricted. Leo was supposedly asleep. I was ostensibly alone, wasn't I? Heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my sternum, I crept toward the staircase. Passing the security console, my eyes snagged on the display. I froze. The feed from Leo's room showed a rumpled, empty bed. Where was the child? Simultaneously, my phone buzzed anew. Check the attic. Attic? Celeste's whirlwind tour hadn't included one. Yet, reaching the upper landing, my gaze fell upon a narrow, previously unnoticed door, tucked away at the corridor's end. Every nerve ending shrieked retreat. Flee now. Don't look back. But the image of the empty bed, the thought of Leo potentially endangered, anchored me. With a shaking hand, I grasped the cool metal knob. It yielded silently, revealing a precipitous flight of stairs ascending into impenetrable blackness. "Hello?" My voice was a fragile tremor in the oppressive quiet. "Leo, are you up there?" Only silence answered, pressing in, heavy and watchful. Drawing a ragged breath, I started the climb, my phone's flashlight carving a weak tunnel through the gloom. Each stair groaned under my weight, the sound magnified unnervingly in the stillness. Nearing the summit, shapes began to resolve in the oppressive dark. Stacks of forgotten cartons, furniture shrouded in ghostly linens, and there, nestled in the furthest corner, a small form huddled beneath a blanket. Leo. Relief surged, potent and dizzying. "It's all right. Come on out now. What are you doing hiding up here?" The figure remained inert, unresponsive. A cold tendril of disquiet tightened in my gut as I drew closer. Reaching out, I gently eased back the covering and recoiled with a strangled gasp. Not Leo. A doll. Disturbingly life-sized, unnervingly rendered. Its vacant glass eyes stared sightlessly upward, a serene, painted smile fixed upon its porcelain features. My phone pulsed again, startling a cry from my lips. Trembling violently, I read the new message. "Now you understand. Leave while you still can." Panic seized me, a suffocating wave. I spun, desperate to escape, only to find the stairwell entrance obstructed. Alistair Ashworth stood silhouetted against the dim hall light, his expression indecipherable. "Disappointing, Ilara," he stated, his voice devoid of warmth. "Such elementary instructions. Monitor the cameras. That was all." Celeste materialized beside him, clutching Leo tightly. The boy's eyes were wide with terror, his small mouth obscured by his mother's immaculately manicured hand. "We can't very well have you spreading gossip," Celeste murmured, her polite facade cracking, revealing something flinty and merciless beneath. A genuine pity. We held such promise for you. I stumbled backward, frantically scanning the dusty confines for an alternative exit, any conceivable escape. Trapped, cornered in this forgotten space, their figures blocking the only way down. Why? The word tore from my throat, ragged and thin. What is this? Alistair offered a smile that was purely mechanical, devoid of light. Let us simply say we possess particular inclinations, and we require personnel to accommodate them. Personnel whose absence wouldn't cause undue disruption. The chilling implication struck with physical force. This wasn't eccentricity, no bizarre initiation. It was something profoundly more malignant. In that stark instant of understanding, primal survival ignited. I surged forward, exploiting their momentary surprise. Squeezing past Alistair, shoving him off balance, I scrambled down the treacherous stairs. Behind me, enraged shouts erupted, the heavy thud of pursuing footsteps echoing my flight. I tore through the silent house, propelled by a singular imperative: the front door, freedom. My fingers brushed the deadbolt when a piercing sting bloomed in my shoulder. A sharp cry escaped me as the world tilted, vision blurring. Whatever substance they'd administered acted with terrifying speed. The room swam. I felt myself collapsing, the floor rushing up. The final image burned into my fading consciousness was Celeste Ashworth's face hovering above, adorned with that same glacial smile. "Sweet dreams, Ilara," she whispered. "When you awaken, the true entertainment commences." How long consciousness eluded me, I cannot say. I surfaced into a dim, windowless chamber, my head pounding, mouth parched and tasting of dust. As my vision gradually acclimated, indistinct shapes resolved around me. Other figures, slumped against damp walls, or huddled on meager pallets. My phone was gone, but a familiar, reassuring weight in my pocket ignited a fragile ember of hope. They'd overlooked the small canister of pepper spray, my constant, discreet companion. I conserved my strength, waiting, observing, until a fleeting opportunity arose. A moment of chaos as they introduced another captive into our midst. I was poised. The ensuing moments were a maelstrom of adrenaline and instinct. The spray afforded me vital seconds, blinding my captors just long enough to slip past them and locate the exit from what I now recognized as a subterranean prison. I burst into the cool, gray light of pre-dawn, gasping lungfuls of untainted air as I ran, propelled by sheer terror. Miles melted beneath my pounding feet until the fluorescent sanctuary of a roadside gas station appeared. Only then did I dare stop. Only then did I call the police. The aftermath unfolded in a disorienting blur of interrogations, flashing lights, and incredulous officials. The Ashworths, stripped of their suburban camouflage, were apprehended, their meticulously crafted world dissolving under the stark glare of truth. Other captives were liberated, souls lost for months, finally found. As for me, the psychic wounds remain. The easy trust I once placed in strangers, in the simple kindness of offering help, lies shattered. Every potential house-sitting job now looms as a potential snare, every welcoming smile a possible mask, concealing the monstrous. Yet, I endured. And through my survival, I played a part in dismantling a hidden horror that had consumed so many. It is a meager solace, perhaps, but one I cling to as I navigate the painstaking process of rebuilding not just a life, but a belief in the possibility of good. Though the next time an unknown number illuminates my phone screen, I suspect I will simply let it fall dark. "Hold that," Ilara murmured, lifting her lens towards the basilica, a behemoth of faith bathed in lunar silver. She sought the precise alchemy of moonlight on time-worn travertine. Naples breathed around us, a nocturnal exhalation thick with oregano, roasted garlic, the phantom sweetness of lemons, enough to postpone our pilgrimage for gelato. 3 days adrift in Italy had taught us the tyranny of timetables was a foreign concept here. Then, a dissonance in the piazza's rhythm. A flicker at the edge of perception resolved into two figures. An older gentleman, sharp in pressed linen despite the humid night, and a youth, a shadow tethered to his wake. They materialized like persistent afterimages beside the Fontana del Gigante, near the trattoria, where terracotta bowls held remnants of our pasta. Coincidence, I'd reasoned earlier, amidst the tourist throngs. Now, their orbiting felt less random, more choreographed, unsettlingly deliberate. Ilara, my voice a low current against her skin. The pair from the fountain, they're here. Her camera descended with studied casualness, a feigned review of digital captures masking a swift glance. The man offered a broad, neighborly wave, bridging the distance with confident strides. Magnifico, the light tonight, no? His English, thick as Neapolitan coffee, arrived before he did, halting within our intimate space. Behind him, the boy remained, a study in averted gazes and profound silence. American girls. So. Alte, he assessed, his smile a brittle facade that failed to warm his eyes. Ilara edged towards me, her camera a shield against her chest. "We need to meet our group," she countered, stepping backward into a fabricated safety net. We traveled untethered, but admitting solitude felt like painting targets on our backs. His smile stretched, humorless. "Ah, no group this evening. I have watched. Only two." A gesture towards the silent youth. "My nipote, Alessio. He learns your language. A coffee, perhaps. I know a quiet place. Very secluded." Alarm bells clanged, discordant in the warm air. The boy, Alessio, remained a cipher, his stillness profound, radiating a desperate wish for invisibility, utterly devoid of scholastic curiosity. "No, thank you," Ilara stated, her tone unwavering. We pivoted, intending escape, but Signore Vieri flowed into our path, that vacant smile fixed. His hand darted out, clamping onto Ilara's arm, a sudden vice just above the elbow. My breath hitched, my heart hammered against my ribs. Is rude, no? The geniality evaporated, replaced by a steely edge. "We practice. You look Italian, perhaps? Good for him." We were emphatically not Italian. Fair hair, pale eyes, unmistakably foreign. Alessio stirred, a ripple of discomfort in his stillness, yet silent. Ilara strained against the grip, a futile resistance. "Let go." Her voice rose, sharp with indignation. Heads turned, casual glances from passers-by, but none paused. He switched to rapid-fire Italian. a low, insistent stream of words, trying to angle her towards the maw of a darkened alley. Instinct, honed by forgotten self-defense classes, surged through me. Polizia. The word ripped from my throat, raw and loud, reverberating off the ancient basilica facade. Aiuto! Help! His grip vanished. Signore Vieri recoiled as if struck. Alessio's head snapped up, his face a canvas of stark fear, threaded with something akin to relief. Lights bloomed in windows overhead. A shutter creaked open. An elderly nonna peered down, assessing the commotion. From a nearby trattoria, two waiters in crisp aprons emerged, their stride purposeful, converging on our position. The transformation in Vieri was instantaneous. Only friendly, he placated, hands raised in a gesture of faux innocence. Such drama. He retreated, pulling the now wide-eyed Alessio with him, melting into the labyrinthine embrace of a side street. We stood alone, trembling beneath the indifferent gaze of the moonlit cathedral. The waiters reached us, a barrage of concerned Italian, peppered with fragmented English. Comprehension dawned, and they steered us, gently but firmly, into the warm glow of their restaurant. The owner, Isabella, materialized with water and soothing murmurs, while someone else summoned the Carabinieri. Police officers arrived with practiced efficiency, their questions patient. Our story, it seemed, was a depressingly familiar refrain. They produced photographs, faces of men known for preying on visitors. Isabella's daughter, Sophia, summoned from upstairs, bridged the language gap, her fluent English clarifying the official inquiries. That evening fractured our journey, reshaping it in unexpected ways. Isabella would not hear of us walking back alone, insisting we remain within the sanctuary of her closing trattoria. Sophia, a university student focused on tourism, unfolded a narrative of resilience, detailing civic initiatives forged to shield travelers. We learned of the Punti Sicuri, the safe zones, local businesses pledged as havens. Isabella's own window bore the small blue emblem, a quiet promise of refuge. Sophia demonstrated an app mapping these sanctuaries across Naples' intricate map. The following morning found us on a walking tour, guided by bright university students. Yes, they armed us with knowledge, districts to bypass after dusk, the anatomy of common scams, designated points of assistance. But crucially, they also unveiled the city's soul, hidden courtyards, breathtaking vistas, the authentic warmth beneath the surface grit. Sophia connected us to a digital sisterhood, a network of women navigating Italy, exchanging advice, bolstering each other via shared platforms. We found ourselves messaging fellow explorers, forging spontaneous alliances for nocturnal wanderings. Ilara's photograph, the one capturing the basilica's moon-kissed facade, found an unexpected purpose. It became an emblem for a tourist safety campaign, illustrating the very safe zone program we'd discovered, a poignant juxtaposition of beauty and vigilance. We lingered in Naples 3 days beyond our itinerary, navigating its streets with newfound understanding. We learned the geography of safety, which trattorias were sanctuaries, the late-night glow of welcoming shops, the arteries patrolled and well-lit. Isabella's became our nightly anchor, a place to dine, connect with other nomads, and weave our experiences into a shared tapestry. Fear hadn't extinguished our wanderlust. It had simply recalibrated it. We learned the vital dance between caution and curiosity, awareness and adventure. Crucially, we saw that for every shadow, like Signore Vieri, countless points of light stood ready to assist. Just last week, a message arrived. A solo traveler, unnerved by a similar encounter, recognized the blue sticker from our shared posts. Isabella's trattoria had been her refuge, shielding her until help came. When inquiries about Naples arise now, I speak of Isabella's sharp, sweet limoncello, of Sophia's insightful tours through layered history. I recount the watchful nonna at her window, the unhesitating solidarity of the waiters. That is the enduring truth of our Naples night, not the tremor of fear, but the strength of the community that rose to meet it. Signore Vieri, ironically, imparted a profound lesson. Genuine hospitality never demands, it simply offers. True kindness engenders security, never fear. His apparition first materialized on a Tuesday, not with thunderclap or omen, merely a face suspended in the adjacent window pane as I drifted toward my car, keys cold in my palm. Yet, the sheer voltage of his stare snagged my attention, a momentary snag in the fabric of the mundane. I smoothed it over, attributing the ripple to an overtaxed imagination. How could I have known that fleeting specter was the overture to a symphony of dread that would soon orchestrate my every waking moment? My name is Ilara. 6 months prior, I had sought sanctuary in this enclave of manicured lawns and whispered histories, a suburb where sprinklers pirouetted in unison at dusk and gossip bloomed virulent and swift. After the city's relentless cacophony, I craved the quietude, folding myself into the anonymity it offered. The man in the window, my neighbor, a peripheral figure until that Tuesday, perhaps cresting 50, his hair thinning like autumn grass, a perpetual grimace etched onto his features. Our interactions had been confined to the sparest of nods, hieroglyphs of civility exchanged across the invisible boundary of our properties. His name remained a blank space, but following that window-framed stare, his presence began to saturate my awareness. It commenced subtly, like rising damp. Tending my fledgling garden, I'd feel the prickle of observation, a psychic weight on my shoulders. A glance upward would catch only the twitch of a curtain, a hasty retreat into shadow. Retrieving mail became an exercise in peripheral tension, anticipating his sudden materialization on his porch, that unwavering, intense gaze pinning me like a specimen. Rationalizations fluttered weakly. Loneliness, perhaps. A simple curiosity about the newcomer. Yet, day bled into day, and the sensation of being perpetually watched intensified, coiling in my gut. One twilight, maybe a week after the initial observation, as I wrestled the recycling bin to the curb, his voice sliced through the quiet air. A truly luminous evening, wouldn't you agree? I nearly levitated from my shoes. He stood poised at the edge of his domain, hands buried deep in his pockets, a smile affixed to his face that failed utterly to ignite his eyes. "Oh, yes, quite," I managed, the words stumbling, ambushed by his proximity. "Silas," he offered, bridging the grassy divide with a single step. "I believe formal introductions are overdue." A smile stretched thin across my lips, a flimsy defense against the claxons blaring within. Ilara, a pleasure. We navigated the shallow waters of small talk, the capricious weather, the neighborhood's sleepy rhythms. But a profound dissonance hummed beneath the surface. His gaze, an anchor, never slipped from me, even when my own skittered away. He seemed to absorb me, cataloging the drape of my blouse, the nervous twist of a stray hair around my finger. Excusing myself felt like tearing free from something viscous. Back within my walls, the deadbolts clicked with unnatural loudness. Through the window's glass, a silhouette. Silas, still rooted in his yard, a sentinel facing my house in the deepening gloom. In the subsequent days, Silas's presence achieved a near ubiquitous quality. His routines seemed unnervingly synchronized with mine. My departure for work coincided with his retrieval of the morning paper. My return home mirrored his meticulous watering of suspiciously resilient petunias. Always there, always watching. I began to weave variations into my schedule, altering departure times, tracing new paths through the labyrinthine streets. Futile. He possessed an uncanny prescience. One dawn, departing a full hour earlier than usual, I found Silas already curbside, head bowed over the exposed entrails of his car engine. "Engine trouble?" I inquired, striving for an air of nonchalance that felt utterly alien. He looked up, that same disquieting smile resurfacing. "Ah, no. Just tending to the machine's needs. You're embarking early today." The cadence of his words, the implicit knowledge, sent a chill skating down my spine. How could he know this deviation from my norm? Weeks dissolved, and Silas's attentions warped further. I'd returned to discover patio chairs rearranged into cryptic formations, or blooms I hadn't planted, alien purples and feverish reds, erupting overnight in my flower beds. Once, pulling into the driveway, a distinct flicker behind my own living room curtain registered, a phantom movement. Inside, however, everything lay undisturbed, mocking my certainty. Paranoia began to thread itself through my thoughts. Was I conjuring demons from shadows, misinterpreting the clumsy overtures of an odd, perhaps lonely man? Then arrived the night that shattered all ambiguity. 3 a.m. wrenched me from sleep, a sound from downstairs. Initially dismissed as the house's nocturnal sighs, it repeated, a definitive groan, the protest of the single loose floorboard on the hallway. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Reaching for my phone, a lifeline, I found only a dead screen. I distinctly remembered connecting the charger before succumbing to sleep. A cold tide of panic rose in my throat. I slid from bed, a wraith in my own home, creeping toward the bedroom door. The hallway stretched below, a chasm of darkness, but at the stairwell's base, a deeper shadow shifted, coalesced, an intruder. Retreating soundlessly, I scanned the room, desperation clawing for a weapon. My fingers closed around the cool, heavy base of a desk lamp. With trembling hands, I yanked its cord free. Footsteps ascended the stairs now, slow, measured, deliberate. Each tread echoed the frantic beat within my chest. I flattened myself behind the door, lamp held high, muscles screaming with tension. The footsteps paused directly outside. I held my breath, a statue carved from fear. Slowly, agonizingly, the doorknob began to turn. As the door swung inward, I unleashed the lamp, pouring every ounce of terror and adrenaline into the arc. A sickening thud reverberated, followed by a guttural grunt. The figure staggered back, clutching his head. In the meager light filtering through the window, I saw his face. Silas. What in God's name are you doing in my house? The scream tore from my throat, raw and ragged, the lamp still brandished like a talisman. Blood seeped between the fingers pressed to his temple, but the expression contorting his features wasn't pain nor fury. It was something far more terrifying, a kind of ecstatic, manic glee. "Oh, Ilara," he breathed, his voice unnervingly placid, a calm sea over monstrous depths. "I've graced your home many times. I know its secrets, yours too. The precise shade of cream you prefer in your morning coffee. The novel on your nightstand. Page 94, isn't it? The subtle fragrance of lavender lotion you apply before sleep." Nausea churned within me. Every dismissed intuition, every rearranged object, every phantom flicker, validated in that horrifying instant. He had been here, watching, breathing my air, infiltrating the sanctuary of my life. "Leave," I whispered, the word trembling but edged with steel. "Leave now, or I swear I'll call the police." Silas's smile widened, a predator's grin. "Do, please, regale them with tales of your watchful neighbor. They'll diagnose you with hysteria before the first patrol car arrives." Yet, as he spoke, his eyes darted past me, snagging on something. Following his gaze, my breath hitched. My camera, perched unobtrusively on the bookshelf, set up days ago on a desperate, grasping hope to capture this. He witnessed the dawning comprehension on my face, his smug certainty fractured. "You recorded this?" The question was a low, dangerous rumble. I nodded, grip tightening on the lamp's heavy base. "Every single second. Now vacate my house before I provide the authorities with an unedited demonstration of your neighborly concern." For a heartbeat suspended in terror, I anticipated violence. His hands curled into fists, a predatory tension coiling in his stance as he took a half-step forward. Then, abruptly, the energy dissipated. He pivoted and fled, his descent down the stairs a frantic clatter. The slam of the front door echoed, leaving behind a profound, ringing silence. Sleep was an impossibility. I remained wedged against the bedroom door until dawn painted the sky. The lamp clutched tight, every creak and sigh of the house jolting me. Morning brought the police. Their arrival was swift, their expressions shifting from professional skepticism to grim understanding as they viewed the footage. Silas's house stood vacant. He had vanished into the night. But the contents of one room chilled me to the marrow. It was a shrine, consecrated entirely to me. Walls plastered with photographs, hundreds. Me at my desk, navigating grocery aisles, captured through my own windows. Printouts of emails lay scattered, transcripts of text messages. A calendar meticulously documented my daily patterns. My life reduced to predictable data points. The police gathered the evidence, murmuring assurances of pursuit, of safety. But standing amidst that obsessive altar, the air thick with his fixation, I understood safety was a concept forever fractured. I fled that house within the week, its walls irrevocably tainted, violated. New phone number, new email address, even a new shade of hair. My new residence bristled with state-of-the-art security. A therapist began helping me navigate the labyrinth of trauma. Yet months later, the feeling persists, a phantom limb of dread, the sensation of being watched. A curtain's sway, a car idling too long down the street. Each sends my pulse into frantic overdrive. Locks are checked, rechecked, routines deliberately shattered. Because Silas remains adrift, somewhere beyond the horizon of my sight, and a chilling question haunts the sleepless hours. Am I still the sun his obsession orbits? Or has he charted a new constellation of terror, found another unsuspecting soul to draw into his dark gravity? The thought is a constant low-grade fever. Perversely, I find myself hoping his focus remains fixed on me, because the alternative, the image of him beginning this insidious dance anew with someone else, someone unaware, is an abyss too horrifying to contemplate. So I remain vigilant, perpetually scanning the periphery, forever poised. Because the most terrifying monsters, I learned with brutal clarity, don't lurk in mythic shadows. Sometimes they reside next door, concealed behind the veneer of a neighborly smile. And they watch. Always they watch. Midnight lay heavy on the land. I was navigating the serpentine asphalt near Havenwood, a hamlet huddled where mountains bled into deep timberland. The hours stretched thin by a friend's lingering hospitality. My own bed beckoned, a siren call against the escalating deluge. Rain hammered the tarmac, transforming it into obsidian glass, treacherous and opaque. The highway unfurled, a solitary vein through the encroaching pines, utterly deserted, save for my solitary passage. Wipers slashed frantically, a losing battle against the downpour. My knuckles were white mountains on the steering wheel's dark landscape, the hypnotic pulse of the dashed center line, my only guide through the liquid night. Then, rounding a curve that hugged the forest's edge, my headlamps snagged on something. An anomaly, a silhouette stark against the streaming darkness. Instinct slammed my foot onto the brake. The car fishtailed briefly on the slick surface, my pulse cannonading against my ribs. Through the distorted lens of the rain-lashed windshield, it resolved. A human form, stark still at the tree line's ragged fringe. Soaked, face swallowed by shadow. No gesture, no plea for aid, just presence, an unnerving, statuesque vigilance. A tremor ran through me, a primal urge to floor the accelerator and banish the apparition to the rearview mirror. Yet, a countercurrent of conscience tugged. The sheer desolation of the figure, adrift in the tempest, pricked at me. What if genuine peril held him captive there? Lowering the window a mere sliver, a compromise between caution and compassion, I projected my voice into the watery gloom. "Everything all right out there?" Silence answered, thick and watchful. The rain veiled specifics, but the intensity of that unseen gaze was palpable, drilling into me. A coldness unrelated to the night air seeped into the cabin. The reluctance to unlock the door warred with the insistent whisper of, "What if?" "Need a lift somewhere?" I called again, forcing a measure of steadiness into my tone. A slow, deliberate step broke the tableau, water sighing around worn shoes. He advanced. My grip on the wheel became a stranglehold, my heart a frantic drum. Nearer now, the rain couldn't entirely obscure him. A face pallid and drawn, features impassive, eyes like vacant hollows that seemed to pierce beyond mere seeing. Please. The word was a rustle of dry leaves, barely audible above the storm. Town. I need to reach town. A profound wrongness resonated in that whisper, a dissonance I consciously suppressed. Abandoning him felt like a small cruelty I couldn't commit. Okay, I managed. The word brittle. Hop in. The passenger door swung open, admitting a blast of frigid, rain-laden air, and the man himself. With him came the smell of sodden earth and something else, something faintly acrid that coiled in my gut. He settled into the seat, water pooling around him, his stare locked on the road ahead. A sidelong glance confirmed the initial impression, amplified, skin like bleached parchment, bruised crescents beneath his eyes, clothes plastered to a skeletal frame. His hands, resting in his lap, were knotted fists, the knuckles stark white peaks. Any particular place in town? I ventured, aiming for normalcy. Just drive, he intoned, the voice devoid of inflection, almost mechanical. My hands tightened further on the wheel. Keep moving, don't provoke. The car eased back into the flow of the wet highway, the rains drumming on the roof, a relentless percussion accompanying the suffocating silence within. It was a tangible pressure, that silence, heavy with his unseen scrutiny. I could feel his eyes on me, a physical weight. My focus strained towards the road, the slick asphalt, anything but the presence beside me, yet the tension stretched taut, near snapping. Minutes crawled by like wounded things. Finally, the quiet became unbearable. Clearing my throat, I tried again. Car trouble back there. He remained oriented forward, a study in stillness. Then, slowly, his head turned. His eyes, chips of obsidian in the dim light, found mine. I was waiting. The whisper returned, colder this time. A glacial tendril traced its way up my spine. Waiting? For what? His gaze held mine. For you. A hard swallow. My grip on the wheel was now painful. The implication hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. I didn't want to decipher it. Keep driving. Eyes forward. The deluge intensified, blurring the world outside into streaks of light and shadow. The wipers fought a valiant, failing war. A furtive glance confirmed his unnerving stillness. Face an inscrutable mask. What now? Stop the car? Eject him? Yet a paralysis held me, a strange inertia born of dread. His voice sliced through the rain's drumming, low and chillingly calm. You should have kept driving. My mouth felt like dust. What do you mean? He swiveled fully towards me, his hollow eyes seeming to pin me to the seat. You saw me. You should have passed by. Stopping was your mistake. A surge of raw panic flooded me. The words made no logical sense, yet resonated with absolute menace. I needed him out. Taking a ragged breath, I tried, Listen, maybe it's best if I just drop you. His hand shot out, clamping onto my forearm with astonishing speed and strength. A grip like steel bands, icily cold through my sleeve, his fingers digging deep. No, the word was flat, final. You're not leaving yet. Ice water flooded my veins. Fear, sharp and suffocating, clawed at my throat. His grip was unbreakable. His eyes, inches from mine, held a darkness that felt ancient and predatory. Let go, I stammered, the words trembling. He remained motionless, the pressure unrelenting. His breath, cool and strangely lifeless, ghosted my cheek. The car filled with the cloying scent of damp earth and decay. "You will take me," he stated, each word a precisely placed stone, heavy with threat. "Where I need to go. Then you may leave." A frantic nod was my only possible response, my mind scrambling for purchase, desperate only for his exit. What did he want? What abyss lay behind those eyes? Calm. Stay calm. Appease him. Okay. The assent was a thread of sound. "Where you need to go." He retracted his hand, settling back, but his stare remained fixed upon me, an oppressive, physical presence. I drove, navigating the endless rain-slicked road by sheer will, my thoughts a chaotic storm, mirroring the one outside. My pulse throbbed in my temples, my hands shook, but I kept my gaze glued to the unfolding ribbon of darkness. Time stretched, distorted. Then, almost silently, here. I scanned the roadside. Nothing. Only the impenetrable wall of dripping forest, shadows merging into deeper shadows. "Here? Are you certain?" My voice was unsteady. He simply inclined his head, his attention directed towards some unseen point in the murky depths beyond the road. With trembling hands, I guided the car onto the sodden shoulder. He reached for the handle, his movements unnervingly unhurried. He unfolded himself from the car, a wraith momentarily defined against the tempest, then just a shape merging with the gloom. He stood by the roadside, gazing not into the forest, but back, at me. I waited for him to melt into the night, but he remained, a fixed point of shadow and rain, watching. I didn't hesitate. The gear shift slammed into drive. The accelerator met the floor. Tires spun, spitting gravel and water, before finding purchase. The car leaped forward, engine screaming into the night. My eyes locked on the road ahead, refusing the rearview mirror's temptation, refusing the image of him standing sentinel in the downpour. Yet, as the miles devoured the darkness, the sensation lingered, an indelible awareness of being watched, his presence a phantom weight, pressing down long after he was physically gone. And now, sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, or when rain drums against the glass, the image surfaces, the sodden figure at the forest's edge, patient, waiting, always waiting.